On this episode of Lapeef, Let's Talk.
You can't think for yourself. You got to move based off of what society and the mob tells you to do. I learned that cancel culture was more prevalent than ever, and that it didn't mean anything to me, and that people will cancel you in a heartbeat, or they'll try to, based off of how they feel, and not necessarily based off of logic, reason, or trying to understand what somebody else thinks from a different perspective. And then lastly, I've learned that nobody controls me.
Guys are just tuning in. Welcome to Lapeef. Let's talk. Moving to our final topic. But before we do, make sure you guys get them likes up. We appreciate it. 2020 was a year to remember. COVID, riots, politics, etc. Our next topic is, what have we learned in 2020? What have we learned in 2020? I'm going to start with you, Ashley. What is one thing that you learned from last year when it comes to us as a community?
When it comes to us as a community, I learned that, a lot of us have a lot of talent that we want to use, and we need to figure out how to really use those talents in the most productive way. A lot of times I don't think we do. And I learned that people sometimes make excuses. Like, we have all this time on our hands, and I noticed that some people are still kind of not working out, or they're still kind of, not doing things. I know I've done that, like, oh, okay. I'm realizing that I did have the time, I just needed the consistency. And I also learned that, just time is just, and not that I didn't know this before, but it was just a reiteration of the fact that time with your loved ones are just so important. You need that, you need memories, and you need laughter and connection with people.
Rhea, 2020 was a year to remember. COVID, riots, politics, etc. What is one thing that you learned from last year when it comes to us as a community?
I learned that planning is beautiful, it's necessary, and it's responsible. But what you got to remember that is that in the eyes of the universe, your plan is nothing but a suggestion. You got to know how to stick and move. You got to know how to adapt to your situation, because nothing's too ridiculous to become your reality. So I think a lot of people had plans and things they wanted to do, things that vacations and things that were supposed to happen, and COVID kind of just knocked that out the box. So I definitely think being more adaptable, being able to bounce back when those plans fall through, is something that we all learned going through this, for sure.
Tawana, what is one thing that you learned from last year when it comes to us as a community?
When it comes to us as a community, that's the part that throw me off. I'm like, I learned that e-learning was a struggle for all of us. I learned that most of us are not teachers, and we had a huge challenge when it came to, that transition with our kids. Do I think that I learned anything about us as a people? I mean, no. I think everything that came out in 2020, I already realized or knew it was happening. So I guess I didn't learn anything new, except that I am not a teacher, and I am so grateful for people like Ashley. I cannot wait till school opens back up, and so I can successfully put my children back into that institution. I did also learn that I like working from home, and I can't. Please don't change that. My company that I will not name. Please don't change. Other than that, I'm not, really sure that. I can piggyback off of what Ray and Ashley said. I think those were good points. Mm-hmm.
I think I learned a lot from 2020. I've seen a lot of people talking about stocks, so a lot of people are investing, which I am proud of. I've actually learned a lot about like seeing how the system works when it comes to politics. Like the power of the governor, the power of the president. These are things that I was like unaware of, but because we were in that pandemic, I learned that. I've also seen that that a lot of people were actually ready. So a lot of people actually thrived during this time, which is crazy. But it kind of makes you think that you have to be thinking ahead, and you have to prepare yourself. You have to be putting yourself in position that if this ever happens again, that you don't fold. So there are a lot of people that made millions. They wasn't sitting around crying. So I think that was something that I've learned in 2020. I also learned that, and it's not like that I didn't know it before, but you have to value like the ones that you love, because they can get this disease or get anything in life, and you can wake up and they can be gone, or you might not be able to get the opportunity to go to the hospital to visit them, and then next thing you know, they're gone. So I think 2020 has taught me to spend more time with the family, spend more time with the kids, to save, making sure you have like 6 to 7 months of living in your accounts, with the stocks, that the savings accounts are not going to give you like any money to invest your money into stocks, and just to be ready for whatever. And time. What have you learned in 2020?
The same thing that my principal taught me way back when I graduated high school was that success is when opportunity meets preparation. And the things that I went through in 2008 prepared me for what happened in 2020, which 2020 for me wound up being the most profitable, best year of my entire life. I did everything I wanted to do. I also learned that there are certain states that I can't spend the overwhelming majority of my time in anymore. Hence why I had moved to Miami for the entirety of the winter. I did a lot of traveling in 2020. I wasn't subjected to the same things that everybody else was subjected to. And another thing that I learned is that people panic when they're not prepared. You've seen everything that was happening with all of this toilet paper and all of this other type of stuff. And people really just, they weren't really living for not only today, but also being prepared for tomorrow. But they were really caught up in a situation where they were subjected to what anybody else wanted to do for them, such as a lot of these governors or whatever like that. And they weren't really in a space to where they can control their own narrative. So I also learned that as it relates to politics specifically, and I say this without any reservation whatsoever, and we had a lot of these conversations on a lot of our earlier shows, but with regard to politics, that I was a lot more conservative than I realized that I was. I realized, and it was almost like an exclamation point, in that I was raised to think a specific type of way and to vote a specific type of way because that's just what my family expected for us to do. But then when I started doing my own search and thinking, and started evaluating and paying attention based off of what was going on in society and how everybody thought emotionally, instead of coming to their own conclusions, they let everybody else create a narrative for them, and then created and said, well, you have to do this, or you're not black, or whatever like that. Um, and it's just so funny because my guy, honestly, in the presidential election was Andrew Yang. I raised money for him. I stomped with him. I campaigned with him. I even did an interview with him on my channel. But the thing about it is just that I've learned that group think is more important than individual thinking. You can't think for yourself. You got to move based off of what society and the mob tells you to do. I learned that cancel culture was more prevalent than ever, and that it didn't mean anything to me, and that people will cancel you in a heartbeat, or they'll try to, based off of how they feel and not necessarily based off of logic, reason, or trying to understand what somebody else thinks from a different perspective. And then lastly, I've learned that nobody controls me. I do what I want to do when I want to do it. And I don't subject myself to the idea that I have to do things based off of race, but character and principle and people that align more closely with my values. So for me, 2020 was the best year, not only from a financial perspective, but also from a mental and principle, realigning what my principles are and doing, and spending more time with people that actually mean the most to me, as far as evaluating whether or not you're a friend Just because you family, just because we got the same blood, don't mean we friends. I rock with the people that really rock with me, and I've really learned to truly get comfortable with being uncomfortable, which has allowed me to thrive. So that's what I learned for 2020. It was a great year for me.
Anton, JR, you muted or something. I can't hear you.
My bad. I was saying, Tawana, that was great, Anton. Tawana, go ahead and close us out with this topic. Final thoughts?
JR, I feel like you changed the question for the ladies. You connected it to the community. And then for Anthony, you just was like, well, 2020, but it's cool. So I'm going to leave it at this. I feel like I became a better mother in 2020. I believe I became a better partner in 2020. I believe that I was blessed in 2020. I have lost no family members, knock on wood. Health is so important. I learned that to take care of yourself, make sure that you are eating healthy, make sure you're conscious, not just when the pandemic hit, but just in life in general. I'm so grateful for everything that I got going on in my life. And a lot of everybody know what's going on in my life. I'm just really, truly grateful for that. And, I just feel like 2020 was a lesson, especially what they are saying, just a lesson to be closer to your family and to really appreciate them. And I definitely took that time, which is why I never want to work in another office again. I love being at home with my kids, with my significant other. He probably don't like it, but I love doing being at home with him. So, yeah, that's what 2020 taught me.